Hello guys, welcome back to our channel Planet for Tech. I hope you all are doing great and learning lots by watching all the continuous episode of our tech series and MongoDB Beginner to Master. So guys, till now we have completed 3 episodes of this series, and in the previous episode we have understand what is the basic concept behind the NoSQL, why it is more preferable than RDBMS. Now, in today's episode number 4, we are going to understand the difference between the RDBMS and MongoDB. What is the difference we are going to see in today's episode, and after that we will start our journey of practical. So from episode 5, we are going to start the practical journey. But before moving to ahead, it is very mandatory to understand what is the difference between the RDBMS and MongoDB. So let's start it. So guys, for better understanding, I have prepared one tabular chart here so that I can describe you in a well formative way. So the first row you can see here, there is some structural difference. So that structural difference we have to understand in a brief way because we are going to deal day to day with that structural difference only. So in RDBMS, you can see here I have made one arrow. So in RDBMS means MySQL. We are going to take an example of MySQL and other RDBMS also you can use. But for reference, we are going to take the example of MySQL. So in RDBMS, we use the table. We create a particular predefined table structure. There are certain columns and certain rows are there. So we use the table. But in MongoDB, we are going to use the collections. So when we say collections in MongoDB, so you don't worry about like what this collection is. So this collection is nothing but the replica of table what we were having in the RDBMS. Now the second point is row. So in table in RDBMS, all the information we were storing in a row format. So there are certain columns and we were storing the information in a row wise. But here in MongoDB, we are going to have the document. So in RDBMS, one row is giving us one information. In the same way, here in the MongoDB, we are going to have document. So one document will have the one information. And in RDBMS, we were dealing with the columns. So we can see like there are different columns like username, password, email, mobile. So different columns we were having in the RDBMS. But here in the MongoDB, instead of the columns, we are going to have the fields. So here we are going to call that thing as a fields. So this is the main structural point we have to understand. Table is called as collections, row we are going to call it document, and the column we are going to call it fields. So this is the structural difference, and other are the behavioral or you can say the feature wise difference, so that we are going to understand one by one. So here you can see this is the left side column. I have maintained the feature of RDBMS, and in the right side we have the NoSQL, that is MongoDB. So you can see the first point is very common. It is a relational database. Obviously, its name is RDBMS, relational database. It means here we were storing the data in those related data in a tabular format. That is why it is called as the relational database. But here you can say it is non-relational database. So how this structure of database is here? So here it is not relational, but it is hierarchical. So in MongoDB, we are not going to have the relative relational data. We are going to have the hierarchical data, and it is non-relational, and it is a document-oriented database. So we are going to have the document for every data. The second point is it is not suitable for hierarchical data storage, but MongoDB is suitable because RDBMS is suitable for relational database and MongoDB is suitable for hierarchical database. So these 2 points I hope it is clear to all. Now the next point is it is vertically scalable. This point guys you have to understand very properly because this is being asked like what you understand by the vertically scalable and the horizontally scalable. So that thing we have to understand. So vertically scalable means, let's suppose you have one device or laptop you can consider, and that laptop is having few GB of RAM, like 8 GB or 16 GB, and you feel like the data size is getting increased and the laptop is or server is not performing properly, it is slow, it becomes slow. So what you will do? So that time definitely you are going to increase the hardware of that particular server. So when we talk about the server to performance, so we definitely deal with the RAM. So we are going to increase the RAM in the same server. Guys, you have to make a note here. We are going to increase the RAM on the same server, but that is what is called as the vertically, means we are going to put one more and more RAM there. But in case of MongoDB, it is not like that. Here, we are not going to increase the RAM. Instead of that, we can have parallel servers. We can have more than one servers. They will communicate with each other in a together way. So that is why it is called as the horizontally scalable. So here we are not going to increase the RAM, but we are going to increase the number of servers. However, this becomes costly, but when we consider the performance wise, so MongoDB is always preferable, because here we are not going to increase the RAM. It is going to increase the complete server in a parallel way. So this is the what about the horizontally scalable and the vertically scalable. Now let's see, it has a predefined schema. So this one is the also one of the major point. It has predefined schema. It means before storing the data, we need to define what kind of row, what kind of column we are going to have. So what we do basically, we just create few tables, and in every table we create few columns like the ID, username, mobile, password, this created date, updated date. So this way, guys, we create the structure first. Doesn't matter we are having the data or not. Firstly, we create the structure. So the structure is predefined. Before storing the data, we define the structure first. But here you can see it has a dynamic schema. So what means dynamic schema? Dynamic schema means here we don't need to bother about the structure. Don't need to predefine the structure. Like we don't need to worry about like what columns will be there and what will be the table name. This is not yet needed. So as soon as you will pass the data there in a key pair value, so on the basis of the data or document, or you can say the JSON object, it will create its own structure. And there is no existence of the any collections or document when it is not having the data. But in case of RDBMS, there we have the empty table, means the table is there, but the data is not. But in case of Mongo, it is not like that. In case of Mongo, if there is a no data, means there will not be any table. You can say not table, collection. So in case of MongoDB, we have to understand like collection means table. So this is what in a RDBMS we need predefined schema, but in MongoDB we don't need that. Now one more important feature is RDBMS is quite vulnerable to SQL injection. There are some SQL injections by which we can bypass the where condition, but in case MongoDB it is not affected by the SQL injection. So this point is also one important point we can see here. And in the same way, you have to see in a RDBMS we follow the acid property. What this acid property is? Acid means atomicity, consistency, isolation, and the durability. So these are the four uh, database property you can say. So we use basically these four while dealing with the transactions. So that time we deal with these four features: atomicity, consistency, and isolation and durability. So this is the principle what RDBMS follow in a standard way. But in case of MongoDB, this is not like that. There is a separate theorem, there is a separate principles. So it is using. So that is what consistency. This is similar to the previous one, and the next 2 points are different: availability and the partition tolerance. So here you can see the partition tolerance. It means we can create the partition of existing database into multiple servers. So that is why it is called as partition tolerance, and it is available, highly available as compared to this RDBMS. So you can see, so this point you have to understand. If interviewer is asking you like, do you can you describe acid property in MongoDB? So that time you have to reply quickly, acid property not being followed by the MongoDB, but in MongoDB we have the CAP theorem. So what this CAP stands from? So CAP means consistency, availability, and the partition tolerance. So this is what about the difference between their principles what they follow. The next point is that it is a row based. Here we are going to store the information in a row wise, but here we are going to store the information in a document wise. So it is a document based, it is a row based. Now the next point is slower than, it is slower. RDBMS is slower as compare with the MongoDB, and MongoDB is comparatively 100 times faster. You can see in the RDBMS we can have the complex join, but in MongoDB we are not going to have complex join. So this point also you have to make a note. In MongoDB we are not going to have the complex join because it not support that. Now the next point is it is a column based. RDBMS is a column based. All the data are going to have inside the particular column. So, but here it is not like that. Here in the MongoDB, we are going to have field. So it is a field base, you can say. And the next point is it does not provide the JavaScript client for querying. So you know, like to access the MySQL, what we use? Basically, we use PHP and there is a MySQL client and other client, you can say DBAver. So this client software we use to access the MySQL, but there is no JavaScript client. But in case of MongoDB, we have the JavaScript client as well, like React we can use and other as well. So there is a JavaScript client for querying the MongoDB data. The last point is what? It supports SQL query language only. So guys, here only you have to focus. It supports only SQL. It supports RDBMS supports only SQL, but MongoDB supports SQL along with JSON query. So it supports two type of query you can see here, JSON query plus SQL. But in RDBMS, it supports only SQL. It supports only SQL, but in MongoDB it supports JSON query along with the SQL. So this is the difference between these two, RDBMS and MongoDB. Now the next point comes in our mind is like where to use the MongoDB, how we can decide like where we have to use MongoDB and where we have to use the RDBMS. So both are having their own features, both are having their own performance wise features. So accordingly we have to take a decision like what project criteria is and what database stack we have to use. So if there is a need of hierarchical data, if there is a need of storing the hierarchical data, so definitely it is recommended and it is preferable to use the MongoDB. But it is not required there to have the hierarchical data, so you can take a choice by your own wish. But the MongoDB is only required when you need the hierarchical data. So that time it is recommended to use the MongoDB. We can see here. So hierarchical data, to deal the hierarchical data, so there are some examples I have given here. Let's suppose there is a big and complex data. So big and complex data means what? Means there is no, if there are lots of information stored in a different table. So to use those data in a RDBMS, we use the multiple joins. That is going to decrease the performance. So to avoid that situation, we use the hierarchical way, means we use the MongoDB there. And another example is mobile and social infrastructure. So this one also the example of hierarchical data, and content management and delivery. It is also one of the example of hierarchical data, and user data management. So guys, we know as user grows, so their data also grows accordingly. So that is why it comes in the hierarchical data category. And one more thing, that is the data hub. So these are the few examples where we can use the uh, MongoDB, because the only point you have to understand, like, the data requirement is the hierarchical data or not. If there is a need of hierarchical data, so definitely we should use the MongoDB. Otherwise, it's up to you which one you choose. So guys, I hope you all are understood like what is the difference between the MongoDB and RDBMS. So till now we have understand the basic of and the theoretical aspect of the MongoDB and NoSQL and RDBMS. Now in the next episode, episode number 5, we are going to understand its practical context as well. So from episode number 5, we are going to understand the Mongo tool, that is UI tool, that is the Mongo Compass, so that we are going to understand there. So stay tuned and keep practicing things and regularly watch all these episodes. And if you are not subscribed at our channel, so don't forget to subscribe and press the bell icon so that you can get the notification of our updates. So thank you guys, thank you so much for watching.